Hello, my name is Alex Wright, and this is my persuasive speech over violent video games and violent movies. Violent video games and violent movies actually increase the likelihood of the video game player or the violent game and movie watcher to become more violent. Statistics show this is correct. And the reason why I believe that violent movies and violent video games increase violent behavior, like the statistics say, is first off because the violent behavior becomes more common. Second off, the repercussions of the violent actions on movies and games aren't what they would be in real life, so therefore the player and watcher of the movie wouldn't know and wouldn't care about the repercussions. And number three is the violent video games and movies actually promote doing violent actions in the video games, and the movies show the violent actions being cool and collecting fame and money. Therefore, it makes the violence promoted. So, back to my first topic. The violent movies and violent video games make the action more common. So, player in video games like Grand Theft Auto and other violent video games where you're stealing cars, stealing guns, shooting people, shooting at cars, robbing banks, doing violent actions like that, they become common to the player. And in movies like NWA, Gangland, and other violent movies, the violence becomes common in the viewer's eyes. So therefore, the viewer may become more more normal to the violence. Therefore, the player or the viewer may view the violence as a normal common action, which is really not the case. Violence, it should not be a common action. Statistics actually say that violent video games and violent movies promote violence to the player and the viewer of that game, which is not good. And number two is there's no repercussions to the actions in the violent video games or violent movies. So in violent video games, like going back to Grand Theft Auto, whenever you steal the guns, shoot at people, and rob banks, the action has really no repercussions to it. You may see very minimum repercussions, and like same as movies, whenever the people are robbing banks in movies, most of the time the villain gets away with it with the big money and having big fame. This promotes the action, therefore making violent video game players and violent movie watchers more likely to do violence, which can therefore lead to a more increased violent crime rate, which statistics have also proven that violent video games and violent movies have increased those. And in real life, there is repercussions to the actions. If you rob a bank, steal a car, steal guns, like in video games and movies, you're going to jail and you're going to have to pay a fine, which is not shown in video games and movies. And lastly, these video games and movies actually promote the crimes because they get fame, money, and kind of like their own like protection. It's like a gangster is like a cool thing and stuff like that. So the viewer believes that it's cool to rob banks, steal guns, steal cars. They think it's cool, like because in the video games and movies they promote it being cool. So therefore, the player and the viewer of this action is actually being promoted to do it. Therefore, they're more likely to do it. Therefore, they are becoming more violent and increasing the likelihood they're going to be violent. This is why I believe that violent video games and violent movies are increasing the violence of the viewer and the player. I'm Alex Wright, and that is my speech, my persuasive speech over how violent movies and violent video games increase the violence of the player and viewer.